right, we're live. Oh boy. Here we go. Can you hear me now?
That's right.
Sorry, y'all. I had to kind of move between rooms here. Oh. Well, Chris, how's everything been going?
Oh, great. Great.
Chris and I were just sitting here talking about Amelia Earhart. This is a bit off topic from investments, but we just got to talking, and Chris was telling me that there was some news recently that some unidentified aircraft were spotted again in, let's see, where was this? Arizona.
That's right. Near our military bases.
Yeah, I thought I had that story pulled up.
There it is.
Yeah, maybe this is it. Yeah, this headline says UFO Striker fighter jet is among swarm of mysterious objects spotted near U.S. military sites in Arizona. So,
And what else is in Arizona? Area 51.
yeah. Yep. What? Roswell. Roswell was
That's
what
right.
this got me thinking about. That's another hot spot that I think.
Right. Yep. Roswell's where Area 51 is.
Oh, that is where Area
That's right.
51 is. Okay. I guess I ought to know that.
And there are many stories from people who have claimed that they were employed by the government for a period of time and were taken there for work and worked on extremely advanced technology, and this is years and years ago. Technology that we still cannot duplicate. Now, I can't verify that, but there are stories out there that people say are verifiable that they worked there and worked on technology like anti-gravity, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, from what I understand, there's a lot of those stories. It's been a while since I've looked into them, but I remember hearing rumors at one point that some of our defense contractors, I'm not going to name them by name, but our military industrial complex, I've heard that some of the technology has been given to one of those guys and they're safekeeping it. Now, I don't have any evidence or proof of that, but I feel like that's something I've heard more than once.
And could very well be true. I don't put anything past our government right now.
Yeah, I've even heard that the radar technology that we have today is from one of those events.
Could very well be. And actually, what was interesting, I heard from the mouth of one of the men that was supposedly employed there that he described it as someone asked him what the anti-gravity was like. And he said they had a craft that they basically kept in one spot that was hovering, and claimed that he could not come in contact with it. That it was like, you know how when you put two ends of a magnet and you can't touch them, how you can get them close, but they will repel each other. That's how the anti-gravity worked, that you couldn't get close to it because there was some kind of field that kept you from touching it. But anyway, that's how he described it, that they never could. And honestly, a lot of the people that they got to work on these things or supposedly got to work on them were very advanced, very smart in their mechanical knowledge and how to put things together. A lot of them were brought out there because they were able to invent some things, that technology that we didn't have, and they couldn't figure it out either.
Yeah, I can't think of their names off the top of my head. I may look it up here in a minute, but I know that not too terribly long ago there was I think he was a former Air Force intelligence officer, testified about some of these things either in front of the Senate or Congress or both. But and I mean that made headlines all over the world for weeks. And he's just one. I want to say we've had plenty of other fighter jet pilots come out and say that they've seen things that they can't explain.
Right.
And you can argue, I was telling Chris earlier, you can argue that this might be somebody like, China trying to take a peek at what we've got going on. You can argue that point, but the thing that makes it difficult to argue that point is when you hear some of these pilots and veterans talk about the speed and the maneuvers of these aircraft. Like I've heard.
So right there, go down a little bit. Right there, where it says the military jet.
Yeah, the military jet was struck midair by an orange and white UAS. So that's another acronym. I haven't heard this one before, but it says uncrewed aerial system. The term refers to drones. So,
which is very interesting because from other stories I've seen, there's been people that tried to get close, so they could use their cameras to see as far as they could. And out in the middle of nowhere, the government and their workers out there knew that people were out there. And if there's a technology out there that Roswell, who is very, very particular about keeping their airspace and their area clear, if they didn't know they were there, it's some kind of new technology.
Yeah. It doesn't say anything about whether they spotted them on radar. So that's what I was looking for, was to see if it mentioned anything about if they showed up on radar.
And they will, if they didn't, they'll never admit to that.
Yeah, probably not. Although I want to say the helicopters that we sent to go get bin Laden, I think we have some capabilities to create aircraft that are hard for radar to detect.
Yeah, they were stealth.
Says the FAA told the Post that the agency documents unidentified aerial phenomena. Now, this is the acronym that I'm more used to hearing now, UAPs.
Right.
So UAP sightings.
UAP has basically taken the place of UFO.
Yeah, that's the new UFO term, I think.
But interesting times, though.
Yeah, and I mean, it feels like we're starting to get at another crossroads of a bunch of new technology now. I mean, drones I don't know when UAVs first became a thing. They've certainly been out for a while, but prior to now, they've mainly been military applications, or been used in military applications. So, I know a broader amount of civilians have access to some of these things now, especially the small drones. But so it's got to be a challenging time to work for the Federal Aviation Administration right now.
Well, and if they're being honest about not knowing what these things are, it is very interesting because our U.S. military should know about just about everything that's out there, and if they're calling them unidentified, it's truly puzzling if they're calling them unidentified.
Yeah, no, it's concerning for sure. I've always been told that typically our military or our government has technology I want to say typically 20 to 30 years in advance sometimes of
That's
when
right.
we're even supposed to know about it. So I always hope that they have better identification capabilities than we know about. But
Right.
these days, though, it makes you wonder.
Well, with some of the things that have come out recently about our government, um, I don't know. It's hard to know if any of this stuff is true.
Yeah. Yeah. And those of you that are listening in India and other places outside of the United States, just know that, our government sometimes does things that we don't agree with. We, just like everybody else, we elect our officials, but then we just have to trust that they know what they're doing. And
I'm sure you guys over in foreign countries don't experience that. We do here.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure I don't know.
Now, every country, every citizenship has experienced that on some level.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Let's see. Some U.S. officials, U.S. advisor, could be drones used by foreign cartels for spying or smuggling drugs. Now, I could definitely see that being the case, because my understanding is that cartels are actually pretty technologically advanced now, so that could be true.
That's right. And Arizona's a border state.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think the cartel views they view it like a business, even though it's an illegal business.
And they've got billions of dollars to play with.
Yeah, yeah. I guess, why wouldn't you use the latest technology to try to help your business?
Right.
It feels weird to call it that because it's unsanctioned and illegal, but.
And then you're getting off into another area that is strange, and that is arms dealers who sometimes seem to have no scruples or morals.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing that I know we've had some trouble with in the past is people, shady arms dealers. I don't know to what extent that goes on today, but I'm sure it's still an issue today. I just don't. That's not a subject I know a ton about.
And there's verified proof of certain people selling to both sides.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's one problem with business, and I mean, again, I like capitalism better than a lot of other systems, but one of the downfalls of it is businesses don't really. Money is money, they don't, a lot of them just don't really care about morals or ethics like they should.
And that's one of the things that we try to do on this channel is try to marry economics or the or trying to get by with morals. And if you're going to be a Christian, if you're going to be someone who cares about morals, there are certain things when it comes to economics that you can't do. And, selling to the good guys and the bad guys would be one of those.
Yeah. I mean, there have to be some ground rules, in my opinion too. That should be one of them. But anyway, that's definitely, the whole UFO thing is definitely a topic that I'm always pretty interested in. I need to do some more.
And maybe on the category of some of those things that were kind of may have been unexpected to some people, we can start with number one there.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of governments, another thing we wanted to talk about today is the U.S. recently lost its perfect credit rating, which is a pretty big deal. And I think I have the debt clock pulled up somewhere. Let me see if I can find that with all these. Here it is. Yep. So my understanding is that we lost that credit rating because of, our national debt just keeps expanding. Everybody talks about this $36 trillion amount, but if you take a look below, you have another total debt number that says 103 trillion, and it's, you guys can't see the screen right now, but man, looking at this thing sometimes just about gives you a heart attack. Like the numbers are the numbers are still churning, and if you sit here and to find this website, you can go to usdebtclock.org, and you can see where you can see like an active view of the numbers changing. And it's interesting. I'd definitely recommend taking a look at this thing. I wouldn't, we trust God, so I wouldn't ever say that you need to lose any sleep over this stuff, but at the same time, we do need to be aware of it. And I think our role as followers of Christ is to at least have some level of influence on our society. So I think it would do us well if more people were aware sort of our debt level. I know people, like I said, hear about the 36 trillion number, but I wish more people would go and visit the site and see that it's a little bit more complicated than that. Because, and I don't know what other nations have in terms of what we call entitlements like Medicare and Social Security and so on, but in our country, that contributes to a lot of the debt. And then we have a whole nother category over here that says interest on debt, which is another 1 trillion. Not as bad as I thought it would be, but
still a lot.
Still a lot. I remember I looked not too long ago to see sort of what the United States brings in from quarter to quarter. And I want to say here lately we've been averaging, and this is talking about like what the Treasury brings in from all businesses. I want to say it's somewhere between 3 and 3.5 trillion a quarter approximately right now. So, to me, it just, in the private sector with businesses and even private citizens, it would be advisable to pay down some of that debt. Not that you have to pay it all down immediately, but, most people, if they want to be more financially healthy in their own life, they'll put a little, like we've spoken about before, a little extra money towards their mortgage or something like that. Well, in my opinion, that's what the United States Treasury needs to be doing to the national debt. They need to start finding, or if they can't put some money towards paying down the debt, then they need to, and I think this is part of what Trump's been trying to do with tariffs. They just need to find ways to collect enough revenue to start. But I mean, if they're already collecting $3.5 trillion a quarter, taxes, we may not pay as many taxes as a lot of other countries do, but I would not call our tax rate low. So you can't just continue to increase taxes.
Well, what we're having to do is, and I'm not telling you anything, you already know this, but for the average person out there, what we're doing is it's not really, to me, the taxes we're paying. It's that we are having to take our money and foot the bill of other people who are not working. And that's really the bad part of the taxes. If this was just going to people who strictly, absolutely needed this money, that would be one thing. But entitlements are killing us.
Yeah, entitlements are definitely the biggest hit. And then I want to say there's a metric on here, I'm trying to find it, that's called hidden wealth. Yeah. Check this number out. Total hidden wealth 172 trillion. Almost 173 trillion. So, and understand that a lot of this is going to be billionaires and people in excess of $10 million plus, but it's one of those things where it's like you don't want people's tax burdens to be worse, but at the same time you also don't want people to be dodging taxes altogether. So we have sort of a multi-pronged issue in that, like Chris said, we have a lot of entitlements that people receive, but we also have a lot of hidden wealth that isn't accessible, and it's hard to blame people for that. I mean, if you have a government that's acting irresponsibly, I mean, why would you want to fork over a lot of your money to them?
And people can say what they want to say about the ultra wealthy, but what they do pay is a huge percentage of what they bring in.
Yeah. If you go just straight off the income tax, the federal income tax, I want to say at the top rate, it's still like somewhere between 37 and 40%, so that means that the government, if you don't create a corporation or an LLC or whatever, they're taking 40% just straight up, it's crazy. I mean, and I think I've said this before on the podcast, but it blows my mind that we can't just agree on some sort of flat tax. And then on top of the income tax, we have a tax on just about everything else. You have taxes on your vehicle, on your home. If you own land, you have to pay taxes on that. I want to say, I don't know if this is all over the country, but I know where we live in Mississippi, there's a restaurant tax even. And then you have a sales tax. And I want to say those are two separate taxes. So, I mean, and it's like I said, our government's collecting plenty of money per quarter.
Well, and you think about this, the highest tax rate, if you are single and you make over $626,000, you're in the highest tax bracket. So that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you're right, it is 37%.
Yeah. I mean, that's, for the government to be inching towards taking half of people's income, to me, that's unacceptable. I mean, it's not, I don't think it's sustainable. And I think that this debt clock is showing that what we're doing is unsustainable.
And you think about this, if you are just over the limit, and you're having to pay the highest tax bracket, you could take a cut and make less and still take home more. And that's what, a lot of people are doing. If I was making that much, I would definitely give to my church or charity or something like that, so I wouldn't have to give it to the government.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think a lot of people are electing to do just that in a lot of cases now. Another number, too, that's crazy to me is there's this bracket on the national debt clock that says total interest paid. And I want to say that I don't know if this is just for this year. It must just be for 2025. And if that's the case, this is concerning. It means that already in 2025, we've paid $5.4 trillion just in interest on the debt that we owe. So that means that, like I said,
it's a staggering amount.
Yeah. I mean, if the Treasury is only pulling in $3.5 trillion a quarter and we've already paid over $5 trillion in interest, that's starting to get pretty sketchy.
I think you're right, because some of those brackets there below are saying per year right there. We're right below the good. Right where that thing just came up there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like, see the where it says
per year. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's one that says USA total interest savings per year. I I don't even completely understand what that one. I
I
don't.
also like, go back up. I also like, not that it's a huge amount compared to the trillions of dollars. However,
Doge.
apparently Doge this year has saved us so far $453 billion, which is an average of a little over $4,000 per taxpayer. Now, I know that in the big scheme of things, that's not a whole lot, but at least it's something.
Yeah, and I mean this tells you that even though Doge so far has saved us 453 billion, I mean, as you can tell, the other numbers that we've been reading off have been in the trillions. So we have a lot more work to do, unfortunately. And if we fail to elect people that care about making us more fiscally responsible, and don't get me wrong, me personally, I don't care what party they're affiliated. Well, I'm not gonna say I don't care at all, but I wish all parties, whether it be Republican, Democrat, whoever, I wish that this would become a bipartisan concern, because lately it seems like it's mainly been a right side of the aisle concern, which doesn't make sense to me.
And look how quickly this grew just below the Doge clock there. The U.S. federal debt, what we spend to our gross domestic product ratio. In 1960, we spent nearly 53% of what we brought in. In 1980, we actually reduced that to almost 35%. Just in the year 2000, we were spending 58% of everything that we brought in. Now, 25 years later, we're spending 123% of what we bring in.
Yeah, it's absurd. I want to say 1980. What was that? Reagan.
It
When
was.
Reagan was president.
Mm-hmm.
So this debt clock goes to show you. I know people get tired of hearing about Reagan all the time, but man, he deserves a lot of credit for. And I mean, that still to me seems like a high number spend, but it's far less than, like you said, what we're doing now. 2000. What did George? I don't know if George Bush got elected in 2001 or 2000, but I know he was president when September 11th happened.
Right.
So it was either him or Bill Clinton that they got it up to 57.83. And then, let's see, after Bush, I guess it was Obama and then Trump and then Biden. And now
Well, think about it this way: because we owned the House and the Senate during the Bill Clinton years, we had a surplus of money. We actually did not have any debt, and we had a surplus of money. And that was when Bill Clinton was president. This is how much our deficit has risen since then.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, people pick on Bill Clinton, but you have to give him credit for that. And, everybody has faults, but
just think about this: to have a deficit of nearly $37 trillion just since Bill Clinton.
yeah,
I mean, you understand
the short time period. Yeah. That's what, 20, just a little over 20 years.
Well, we've only had 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on our fifth president since Bill Clinton, and we're $37 trillion in debt.
Yeah. And another thing, I'm sure another part of the problem is, I mean, I know we spent something over 20 years fighting wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, I guess we weren't technically fighting a war for nearly as long in Iraq, but certainly we spent a lot of time in Afghanistan. And then, we up and left everything, which that's going to get me off on a whole nother tangent. that topic still makes me sore.
And at least 10 years or whatever in Iraq.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we still spent a lot of, Iraq's where we started. I want to say, we got Saddam Hussein is who we went after first.
That's right. Well, and look at the second line from the bottom there, right there. This is per year. in Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security, it's almost $3 trillion per calendar year, just on Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security,
Yeah.
and which is triple our defense budget per year.
Yeah. People always like to pick on the defense budget, and I mean that's a high number too, but not nearly as high as Social Security and Medicare.
That's right.
Which is, I mean, I'm just like everybody else. I don't want people to lose these benefits because I know a lot
If
of
it's
people.
legitimate,
Yeah, yeah,
that's the thing. We have to have better, in my estimation, we have to have better oversight of these things. People have to care. We have to have better, I guess, audits of whether or not the people that are getting this money actually need it. And I think that in reality, DOGE needs to be expanded to make sure that those kind of things aren't happening. And then you wouldn't have those ridiculous, fraudulent amounts being handed out.
yeah. Whether or not Elon decides to continue to be a part of Doge definitely needs to stick around. We definitely need them to stay
Amen.
for sure. So it'll be interesting to see in the coming months and years if they if that ends up being an appointed position, or maybe that should start being another official that we elect. Although I don't know. Honestly, it seems like our track record of electing responsible people hasn't been great here of late. So
That's right.
maybe it would be better off continuing to be an appointed position, but it's hard to say. I don't know. But yeah, we've definitely got to come up with a solution for that.
Well, one of the reasons that you get somebody like Elon Musk is you're not going to bribe him to do the wrong things. He's already the richest man in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. He definitely is very knowledgeable, but the downside to electing ultra wealthy and ultra powerful people is, just like anybody else, they're always going to do a certain amount of things to help themselves and their organizations. So
Yeah. Otherwise, you go to Washington to be an elected, to have an elected position so you can get rich.
yeah, yeah. I mean that's a valid point too. I mean, just look at, you've got Pelosi, Romney. Who's the other one that's been making a lot of news?
Well, I saw just today that Chuck Schumer
Yeah, Schumer's another
had
one.
received a Rolls Royce from the British government, and that's a vehicle that he uses every day. And people are up in arms about the United Arab Emirates giving us a jet.
Yeah. Now the jet, of course, anything that the current administration does, especially since it's Trump and Elon, they're definitely, the scrutiny on them is always going to be a little more severe than it would be on some others.
That's right.
Again, those of you outside of the United States, you may or may not be aware, but a lot of our media organizations or our news organizations, it has become apparent to most of us, I think, whether we be Republicans or Democrats or whatever, you can tell that the news tends to, for lack of a better word, pick on them a little more than they do a lot of other politicians or candidates.
Yeah, to say their coverage is slanted is an understatement.
Yeah, yeah, it's very slanted, and that's something that we certainly need to change. I want to say what the New York Post and Fox, those are pretty much the only two sort of right-leaning news organizations that I know of. I think all of the other organizations lean pretty hard left.
Of any size.
Yeah.
Now there are some others that are right leaning. The Blaze is one. They don't have the resources and they're not as huge as the other. Daily Wire is another. But there are plenty of There are plenty of left-leaning media outlets for sure.
Yeah. Now, another telling thing, if you look at the U.S. gross domestic product number, that's over 30 trillion. So that makes me feel a little bit better. But if our gross domestic product, and I don't know if this is per year, I'm going to assume that this is per year, but if we are producing 30 trillion worth of stuff a year, then why is it that I just, the debt levels just, they blow my mind. I don't understand why more of that's not translating to.
Well, because look to the left there. We're now spending 122% of what we're bringing in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's ultimately, I guess that's the problem right there. Federal debt to GDP ratio is 122%, which is why we need Doge in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, we're spending 23% more than we're bringing in every year.
Part of the problem in our nation, and I'm sure other nations have this problem too, is most of us just view the U.S. government as this infinite bank of resources. Especially, I know a lot of businesses view them that way, and who knows how many businesses depend on the government for contracts and stuff now. But yeah, we've got to figure out some kind of way to change what we're doing. I don't know how we could ever get back to spending 34%, but we've certainly got to find a way to inch further down than we're inching up. I mean,
now, Kevin, this is another one to look at. Right there where you're at, to the right of the domestic product. Now, I'm not for people not being taken care of by their companies when they deserve it. But do you think that there might be some fraud in the $15.5 trillion that's being spent on workers' compensation?
Yeah, I never would.
$15.5 trillion in workers' comp.
Yeah, that's mind blowing too. I have no idea how that number would be that high. And does that mean that this is the amount that people are suing the government for? Is that what this is?
I don't know what it is. I don't know what all that entails.
That's something I'm gonna have to look into more. That's interesting.
It is.
15 trillion. That blows my mind. That's more than all the other numbers that we've been discussing.
Yeah, that's right.
That one hurts my head. I'll have to get back to y'all on that one.
That's right.
I'm definitely going to do some more digging because that's disturbing. And then you have another one called total federal, state, and local spending, and that's $12 trillion, folks. More than $12 trillion. Man, to me, this just goes to show you, and don't get me wrong, I know that we're a big nation and so we need some government, but man, it feels like we're a little top heavy right now.
Well, here's the thing, what it boils down to. Ultimately, regardless of what our government does, we're going to have to start footing more of the bill ourselves, or our nation can't survive.
Yeah, I mean, that 122.85% number, anything over 100, and really 100 itself is unsustainable.
That's right.
I mean, we can.
I mean, just think if we just spent 100%, if we just spent everything that we brought in, we're still going to be $37 trillion in debt.
Yeah, even if we got that number down to 80%, I would still be highly concerned. I mean, I would start feeling a little bit better, but we have to at least do that. We have to at least, in my opinion, get that down to 80, and then we need to work on getting it back to 50.
That's right.
And if we don't, I'm not trying to terrify everybody, but we're going to be in big trouble if we don't.
Well, look, go back over to the left a little bit just for a second there, if you would. If we just went back to what we were spending in 2000, it would be tremendous. This is just 25 years ago. If we just went back to what we were spending in the year 2000, just under 58% of what we brought in, the number would still be dropping. It would still take us a long time to get out from under that debt, but it would still be, I mean, that was just 25 years ago what we were spending.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really mind blowing that it's 2025 now. This was in 2000. So in 25 years, we've gone from 57 to 122. That also goes to show you that we have.
Look at that. It's doubled. It's over doubled.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Who? Okay, so I know at some point in the 80s Reagan was president, but in 1960s, I know sometime around then was Kennedy.
That's right.
But I wonder who gets credit from taking us from 52 to 34, because whoever that is, we need somebody like that to
Yeah,
to run
that's
next
right.
term.
That's right.
I'll have to look and bring that up another time to see what presidents. Well, maybe I can do that right now. Let's see. Let's say from 1960 to 1980. I know it's going to be several different people, but okay, so we had Kennedy from 61 to 63, Lyndon B. Johnson from 63 to 69, Richard Nixon from 69 to 74, Gerald Ford from 74 to 77, Jimmy Carter from.
Well, I can tell you it wasn't Gerald Ford or Jimmy Carter that did that. But
Yeah. But I mean, JFK, Lyndon Johnson, and Richard Nixon
that's right.
might deserve more credit than we give them.
That's right.
I want to say Nixon, isn't Nixon the one that had Watergate?
That's right. Which really, in the big scheme of things, in nowadays was nothing.
Yeah. And I mean, regardless of
people have done much worse.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, regardless of their faults, if they are responsible for putting us in a better financial spot, then I'd take those guys any day over what we're dealing with now, honestly.
That's right.
But another thing I wanted to bring up while we're on this topic is there's another page for those of you that are listening that you can go to look at the national debt levels on a worldwide scale, instead of just the USA alone. And if we go to this page, it shows us the 36 trillion for the US, and then you have China, their national debt level is 16 trillion. Germany's 3 trillion. Japan is 12 trillion. And India, I believe we have a lot of listeners in India. You guys are at a little over 3 trillion, 3.6 trillion. So it's certainly a common theme of some of the larger nations to have a lot of debt. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. India, from India to the U.S. is the top 5 in terms of high debt. China's public debt to GDP is 85%. Germany is 73%. Ooh, look at Japan. Japan is 290% public debt to GDP. I don't know what's going on there. And then India is 92%. So, congratulations, India. Right now, you are more financially responsible than we are. And so is China and Germany. You guys are currently managing your debt levels better than we are.
The highest individual income tax rate was dropped to 34% in 1980 as part of the Economic Recovery Tax Act in 1981, signed into law by President Reagan.
Say that one more time.
The highest individual income tax rate was dropped to 34% in 1980 as part of the Economic Recovery Tax Act signed into law by President Reagan.
And obviously, looking at the numbers, that made a pretty big difference, didn't it?
That's right. It reduced the highest tax rate from 46% to 34%.
Yeah. That's a big part of the problem, in my opinion, is things are just very unfair. And I would like to think that, we looked at that hidden wealth number. I feel like maybe people would hide less of their wealth if we would start being more fair on
Well,
taxes.
let's just be honest here. And I know that a lot of people don't want to hear this, but it's only fair that everybody carry their own weight. We need a flat tax rate across all incomes.
I agree 100%.
If we just had a single percent or a percentage rate that you had to follow regardless of how much money you made, everything would be better.
Yep. And check this out. Among the hidden wealth numbers, you have recaptured assets, land, real estate, mineral reserves, precious metal, but then you have stock market, which is at almost 51 trillion in stock market assets that can't be touched.
I'll tell you, this is something that's funny to me about looking at these figures here. Go back over to the right. The nearly 173 trillion in hidden wealth. Well, if it's hidden, how do they know how much it is?
Yeah, that's another good point. You're about to blow up my brain on that one. That's I guess that's a good point. I don't know if this is just an estimate, or I don't know where they're pulling these numbers from. I mean, I know that the stock market, the proper name for it is public equity. So, I mean, I know that the big investors or people that own 10% or more of a company, I know that they can see that, but I don't know how they could keep track of smaller net worth citizens like ourselves. I know that banks have to report a certain amount to the government, and most of us use bank accounts. So I don't know.
Which, I'll be honest with you, I'm sure that is a big reason that a lot of governments are pushing for an all digital currency, so there is no hiding it. But because I'm sure that a lot of this, an absolute ton of this, is cash.
Yeah, and you know what? People might hate me for saying this, but well, a part of me wants to say that maybe we'd be better off that way for everything to be able to be tracked, but because our government is unfair and likes to just tax everybody to death, it's also concerning, because if they got to where they could get us all on some digital currency, I mean, they could take us to 60% taxes, 70.
Tell you what, they also could do, and which is one of the reasons that I'm against doing that, is if they don't like what you're saying about them, they can just turn your money off.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah, that's. I mean, really and truly, that's the thing. You just can't trust governments ultimately.
Really, not at all.
Yeah, they're just not to be trusted at all. Because like Chris said, if we did all go to some sort of electronic currency, I mean, who's to say they wouldn't raise taxes 60, 70, 80, 90%, or like you said, shut it off altogether if they feel like you're a threat or you're saying something that they don't want you to say.
Well, it's like the old quip from Ronald Reagan that he's famous for. And he said, he was asked one time, what's the scariest statement you've ever heard? And he said, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a valid point. The government's problem is they can help, but they just financially, they just don't have a good, or if they do have a good comprehension of financial matters, they refuse to be financially responsible.
Well, I'm sad to say, and I hate to say this, but the problem is, you're exactly correct in your assessment of that. However, there are very few people, once you get past a certain level in government, that just aren't corrupt. And the thing is that these people who are getting wealthy, most of them, unfortunately, through immoral means, are described as public servants. And,
Yeah.
and they just truly aren't. They're milking the system, and they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and they're getting bribes and payoffs, and you know, to your point, if everybody that took these positions were there to do the right thing, would be in great shape.
Yeah. A big part of the problem that goes along with that corruption statement is our politicians do a lot of over promising and under delivering.
Oh,
or
sure,
or
to
in,
keep their job.
yeah. Or in some cases they're delivering too much, which is making us more and more broke. So well, they promise things that they don't necessarily have, and that's what creates new debt levels for us and keeps taking us higher and higher.
Well, they're making promises to other people with our money.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um,
It's never hard to be generous with other people's money.
yeah, no, it's not. It's much easier. Um, and how does this, if you're asking, how does this tie into the loss of the perfect credit rating, or what does that mean? In my opinion, what it means is if we don't get it under control, and again, I'm not just trying to terrify everybody, but if you look at what happens to other nations when a nation fails, um, I know Syria's an example. Syria's having some trouble right now. When nations topple, it's rarely a good picture. I mean, it can potentially lead countries to, I mean, I guess the nicest way to put it is civil wars throughout the country. So in the United States, when we think of civil war, we think about the 1800s, between the North and the South. But if we experience another civil war, and hopefully we never do, but if we do, in my opinion, it would be because of debt levels getting out of hand. Um,
Well, it's just like, think about it this way: when a person's credit rating falls, or their perceived risk goes up, therefore, when they borrow money, it's at higher interest rates, right?
mm-hmm.
Same thing happens to a country. If we start borrowing money again, which we have to because we're $37 trillion in debt, that interest rate is going to go up even higher now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other compounding problem with the loss of the perfect credit rating is exactly what you said there, which is that we're already financially unhealthy. Now, if we lost our perfect credit rating and we have to pay, or the government has to pay even more in interest, then that adds to the problem that we already have, which means that, you know, let's say the US was paying, I don't know, 5% on treasury notes, or 4%. Well, now let's say with the loss of that perfect credit rating, investors view the risk as being higher, and now they demand, I don't know, 6, 7, 8% on treasury bonds and so on. That means that if you want to buy treasuries, you'll get a better return, but it'll be at the price of the American people.
That's right.
Or at the cost of the American people. So it's definitely not a desirable situation to be in. And it's also, throughout our history, people have viewed treasury bonds and that sort of thing as being among the safest investments. But in my opinion, that is no longer the case. And it won't be the case until we get that that debt to GDP number back below 100%. And like I said, we have to at least get it down to 80, in my opinion. And even if we get it to 80, we're still in dangerous territory.
And a falling credit rating can also impact the stock market as well.
Oh yeah, and it does. I think people think that, including a lot of companies and investors, I think that people feel like if the government gets in deeper trouble that it won't affect businesses, but It will. If we don't have a government that can function properly, then who's to say that CEOs of different businesses and their board of directors and their shareholders, what's to stop them from becoming, I mean, this sounds extreme, but what's to stop them from hiring their own armies and going to war with each other? I mean, I know that's scary and an odd thing to talk about, but my understanding is that's sort of how the world worked for thousands of years, and I would prefer not to go back to that personally.
And it can also, which I think we're in good shape here. However, it can also affect other countries' willingness to loan us money.
Yeah, that too. I guess, if you were looking at us like a bank looks at a regular citizen coming in for a loan, uh, you know, if you're not in good enough financial shape, the bank's not going to give you the loan. So,
Well, and look at it. We're having to ask other countries to loan us 23% more than we're bringing in every year just so we can break even.
yeah, it's a problem. And where do you even begin on turning it around? I mean, Doge is doing a little something, but the scary thing is they're not doing nearly enough.
Well, regardless, and this is just my opinion, I mean, it may be political suicide to do this. However, we need some people in office who are going to say, hey, look, guys, I know you're used to getting this money from us, but we're just not going to have it this year. And the thing is, that's the only way. That's the only way that you're going to be able to pay off some of this debt. I mean, some people are just going to have to go without. We just don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah, we've definitely
And
got
you definitely don't get elected by telling people that.
No, yeah,
But,
that's a big part of the problem is if you start, if you're trying to run a campaign and you're trying to run your campaign on we're going to claw back the money that we've been giving you.
yeah. Where do I sign up to give you my vote? That's right.
Yeah, vote for me. I'm going to take away all your benefits.
Yes.
But I mean, if we want to be realists and face reality, I mean, we have to do some of that. Or at least, I don't know, maybe one step that would help is, and I know people have been talking about this for a while and it's much easier to talk about than to do, but I think one thing that we need to do in our country is more term limits for starters. We need to get term limits on senators and congressmen, and
That's right.
the sooner we do that, that would help at least a little bit.
And people are going to have to be told. I know what a lot of them. I know what their decision would be, even though you put it to them like this. But some people are going to have to be told, "Hey, look, we're going to have to cut your money back, or in a few years, you're not going to get any money." Some people would still choose to keep the money where they're at and then just not get any money later.
Yeah.
But that's what you're facing. Hey, look, we're gonna have to cut it, or we're not gonna have any money. Which would you like?
Yeah, I think that's the part that people really don't understand. You know, they think that we can just print money out of thin air and everything will be hunky dory.
That's
and
right.
and I mean, to some extent, that is what a lot of nations are doing right now. But if we continue to do that, it's my opinion that we'll inflate ourselves to death or I mean, the cost of living. If we continue to do that, in my opinion, the cost of living will be unmanageable for most of us.
Which is the reason that a gallon of orange juice right now will cost you $10.
Is that what orange juice costs right now?
$10 a gallon.
Jeez. Did you go and see that in the grocery store?
I did.
Which just out of
It's
curiosity?
Kroger.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's actually just under $5 for a half gallon.
Yeah.
As well.
Well, another topic that I didn't have down to talk about today, but you almost wonder if that has something to do with the immigration crackdown. I mean, it's easy to laugh at, but I mean, I'm not saying that the price of orange juice is a reason for why we reverse immigration policy, but I can't help but wonder if that has contributed to that some. That's kind of
Well, you saw what Walmart did last week, right? By
what,
announcing that they were in response to the tariffs that they were going up on their prices.
oh yeah, I think I did hear something about that. It'll be interesting to see how much they go up.
Well, which tells you, and I'm not, again, I'm not. I don't own these retail stores. They have to do what they have to do to stay in business. It shows you how dependent that they are on Chinese products because they wouldn't be going up on these on their prices if they weren't so dependent upon imports to sell.
Yeah, that's another thing that we should have started doing a long time ago that we need to do ASAP is start decoupling ourselves from China. I mean, it's okay to have partners, but we've been way too codependent on each other, and arguably we've depended on them more than they've depended on us. And that to me that just means that we have to do, which is what I think we're trying to do now, which is just bring more manufacturing and capabilities back to our own country.
And this is what people have to understand. Not only the common American man, but also the media. When they start saying things like, well, you raise the tariffs and now this is happening. People don't want to hear that there's going to be pain before there's benefit. And that's what's going to happen. Sometimes things hurt before they get better.
Yeah, that's true. That's the whole problem is we're gonna have to eat some pain and take on some pain if we're gonna get better. And that's what makes the whole thing hard to sell to everybody is nobody likes pain.
Well, I mean,
Including me.
right now we're in the shot area. Okay, we gotta get a shot, and nobody likes needles.
Yeah.
But that medicine's coming.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have to do something. But speaking of Walmart, I just pulled up Walmart on my computer screen because my understanding is that they're, even though they make a lot of money, the interesting thing about Walmart is their net profit margin. Look how razor thin their profit margin is, 2.85.
Wow.
So even though, and for those of you outside the United States, if you are unfamiliar with Walmart, which I don't know if Walmart has a presence in other countries, but but here they are pretty much in every major town, and that's where most of us get our groceries. And well, especially if you're looking for a deal, a lot of people go to Walmart to get groceries and sometimes clothes, shoes. But anyway, over the past year, their revenue, it looks like, was 680 billion, and like I said, their net profit margin's 2.85. So their net income is 19 billion, and that sounds like a lot, and it is. But if you look at the profit margins of other companies, you would see that this is an exceptionally small profit margin that they're running on here, and that'd be very difficult for most businesses to manage with such a low profit margin. So the fact that they've been able to do that for as long as they have, I don't know who their CFO is or who's been doing that, but whoever that guy is deserves a lot of credit for what that tells me is they've been able to keep going with their low prices and continue to be profitable. And most companies are almost incapable of doing that. So whoever their CFO is, you deserve a lot of credit for that.
And they're definitely one of those companies that have made their money off of many, many, many small transactions. I know that in some instances they have some large ticket items. However, on average, they make their money by having many, many, many sales transactions where they make a little bit of money.
Yep, and another crazy thing, I'm looking at some charts. if you look at the revenue numbers from 2021 to 2025, in 2021 they brought in almost $560 billion, and in 2025 it's gone up to $680 billion. So the interesting thing looking at the charts is it goes up a significant little amount every year. So you hear a lot of people complain that corporations are always reaching record profits, and I mean that they're correct on that, and I can sort of understand the frustration with. It's like, well, if we're continuing to reach record profits, why is more of this not trickling down, so to speak? It's a valid criticism, but as you can tell from our conversation on this episode of the podcast, we just have to start managing our money better, or at least the government has to. We have to start holding them more accountable, and we just have to find a way to elect people that are going to be more financially responsible.
Well, if you go by the numbers that you can look up for Walmart, they claim that 66% of everything that they sell in their stores is American made. That leaves 34% is imports. And of that 34%, 60% is from China. Now that ends up being 20% of everything that they sell is from China. And they're having to raise their prices because of the tariffs on China. So that's one question I would ask them. Look, if you're just going to raise the prices on the products that you're importing from China, I get it, okay? But don't raise prices on everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know how to, or if there even is a way to have visibility on that. You might could pull up their investor relations page and it would tell you more about, but I mean, they may not. I don't even know if that's something that they have to disclose. Probably not. But yeah, I agree that companies certainly need to be considerate about how and when they're raising their prices. And I know tariffs are an excuse somewhat, but recently they were lowered a lot on not only China but other nations as well. So, you know, I guess right now we're trying to find what we feel like the right number is to balance paying down debt and also not making it to where citizens can't afford things. So hopefully we'll continue to strike the right balance on that. Because yeah, we have no choice. I mean, I think things are getting better. But I hope that if we do continue to use tariffs, I hope more of that money is directed towards getting us out of the extreme debt that we're in.
And Walmart put out a press release responding to some statements that Trump had made over the weekend, saying, "We have always worked to keep our prices as low as possible, and we won't stop." Walmart said, "We'll keep prices as low as we can for as long as we can, given the reality of small retail margins."
Yeah. And what's crazy is, Walmart sells a whole lot broader variety of goods than, say, somebody like Apple or Meta or Microsoft. Well, Microsoft, you could argue, has a large variety of different goods that they sell, but to me, it's interesting that Walmart. Let me go back to the. Walmart is sitting at a $782 billion valuation, whereas Apple and Microsoft, I want to say, are somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 trillion. Yeah, Apple's worth 3.09 trillion, and then let's see what Microsoft is. And Microsoft is worth roughly 3.41 trillion,
which is also one of the reasons that apparently Apple is working as fast as they can to get manufacturing facilities built over here, so there's no imports from China.
Yeah, and I read somewhere the other day, Chris, I don't know if you've read or heard about this, but I read something too that said that Apple's trying to move some of the production to India, matter of fact.
I had not heard that part. I had heard about the American manufacturing facilities, but I hadn't heard about the India.
Oh, let's see what it says. Well, Trump was saying it's saying Trump asks Apple to stop moving iPhone production to India. So I don't know, but I mean, I view India as an ally. So I mean,
Except those scammer people.
yeah. Well, you have scammers everywhere, but yeah,
That's right.
There's definitely been an issue there for sure. But I don't mind a portion of products being manufactured in other nations, but we certainly have to bring more of it back stateside for sure. But
and look, I want everybody to be able to make a living. However, we got to take care of our citizens first.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the way to go would be to bring more of it back to the United States, and
that's every country. I'm not talking about just America. Every country should take care of their citizens first.
Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be interesting to see what percentage of our manufacturing comes back stateside versus what goes out, but and the portion that does go out, I would rather it be somebody more friendly than China. So I hope we're going in that direction. But with that being said, I think we're getting ready to close out for the day here. Chris, do we want to talk scripture any, or what are you thinking?
Tell you what, why don't we save it for our big discussion for next week for Deuteronomy?
Okay. So I guess we'll kick Deuteronomy down the road again. Maybe we'll discuss that next week. It probably would be better to. It's just me and Chris here talking today, so I think if we're gonna have that discussion, maybe we want to have Ryan here for that. Or, but anyway, I guess that we'll wrap up today. But thank you all for listening. I think I made a Facebook post the other day saying that we passed the 500 follower count. So thank you guys for that. And those of you, like I said, that are listening in India or any other nation, Central America, South America, thank you guys for listening to us and supporting the podcast and the Facebook page. And with all this conversation that we're having about moving manufacturing back to the United States, know that it doesn't have anything to do with spite or trying to be unfriendly towards you guys. It's just that we haven't been as financially accountable as we need to be, and we have a lot of debt that we have to take care of. So the main reason that all of this is going on is because, like we've been talking about all episode long, is we've gotten very unhealthy financially, and so hopefully we can get back to a point to where we have a more moderate debt to GDP level, and then maybe we can start being a little more international again. But certainly in the near term, we have to. Our nation is obligated to take care of its own citizens. So.
That's right.
But anyway, I think we're gonna wrap up. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your week and pray for us, and we'll be praying for you. And
we appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys for helping us pass that follower count. God bless you, and God continue to be with you.